All right, it's a little bit after 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and start the caucus. We got small things on the agenda, but we do have some guests here. So, first of all, I'd like to make a recommendation once we get in the council meeting. Obviously, Jeff Rabel has moved on to other things, so I interviewed 2 people, and I chose Mark Moravchak. My recommendation would be our deputy clerk, and also I met with Cindy Hamrock and Sandra Brett, who will both be substitutes for Paula's job. And they're going to pick up some stuff tomorrow from Nick and get them trained and get in the office to help her out too. So I'd like to recommend that we hire all 3 of those people when that comes around.
What were those names there?
Cindy Hamrock, Hamrock, and I think it's Sandra, Sandra, Brett, Brett. I believe that's how you spell it. There you go.
Okay.
And then we go to the caucus items. Mr. Donovan, Energy Efficiency Project.
Okay, it sounds like Finance had a pretty good discussion about this thing, and we're thinking along the same lines. I did some, the last 2 weeks, I dug as much as I could to try and find grants to help us out and the cost of this, and I could find absolutely nothing. The only grants that are out there that come from the state that have to do with residential, and same thing with federal. Can find nothing out there for governments, specifically municipalities. And I looked at the numbers the way they were, assuming that they were correct, and it was like a 4.5-year payout. And I just didn't think it was worth it. But then I see that Finance looked at this yesterday and got some different numbers about our actual costs, which don't come anywhere near the costs that are estimated in here. And as Nick and I were saying, we're looking at almost a 10-year payback on this project. So my recommendation is...
Can I talk to you about a grant real quick?
A grant?
Yeah. I was contacted by Joanne Wallace. She wants to include us in a grant that the township's applying for.
Oh, science.
Yeah. Well, the costs come way down. It went from like, our share would be $5,000 to our share would be between $1,000 and $1,500 to replace all our street signs.
Okay, when I spoke to her, there was no local match.
Right, there was no local match.
There was no local match, and now there is.
Have to pay for the engineering.
Oh.
The engineering started $10 grand, and she got it down to where she thinks she can get it done for between 2 and 3.
So you mean like road signs? Like
all signs.
Blue Ridge and not Blue Ridge, but
all signs.
You mean all signs like stop here, turn right,
speed limits,
everything.
Johnson Place,
So our
Green
share would
Street,
be
those
what?
type of signs too?
Yeah.
1,500, did you say?
Wow, that's a lot
That's
of
between
signs.
$1,000 and $1,500.
For our share.
We can,
Can we do that at State Highway?
if we can do that for that kind of
Probably
money.
could on State Highway, yeah.
What did I just spend on signs, Nick?
That was less than $100.
No, I mean for last time I bought, remember some stop signs, it was $400 or $500 for just a few stop signs and some posts, and that stuff's expensive.
And our signs are getting pretty beat up.
You know, when they talk about changing like the signs on your street, a whole new pole, or just the sign?
Probably just a sign on the pole.
We'll look at finance, we'll look at that in the budget planning, and I think out of State Highway, we should be able to do that.
Could you call her tomorrow?
I could?
Because I think she's pretty anxious to know what the story is.
Okay, they need to make application for it. Okay. I know it goes through the township, because we're in the township.
Yeah, I'll explain later, but yeah.
Okay.
Are you going to make that
All
a
right.
Mayor 6P sign? On the statutes.
You're changing the name of the street
My
there,
statutes, yeah.
Sycamore Drive.
Nice. Thank you. That's awesome.
As long as we're talking on this subject here, and I know we're waiting, but this kind of fits in. This grant that we're looking at for the potentially for the sidewalk. Okay, I need some input on that as well. I met with Gary Diorio and Joe, and it looks like the township is going to go for some more money for additional sidewalk from Dobbin School up to, is it Canterbury Creek? And since all of these projects all fit into the same plan, and they were all enumerated in this plan, Gary suggested we go in together and try and get money for this. The issue that I have is that since North Elementary now is going to only be a preschool, this funding is for activities from K through 8. I'm wondering if we should still try to go for this. I mean, it's still sidewalks, it still provides walking opportunities to school from the northern area of Poland to here. So it still could be a viable project for that. But we need to do it together with the township. And that's why I want to bring this up now, because if you're going to call Joanne, we need to bring this up in conversation as well.
So we're talking about a joint grant?
A joint grant. Well, because all the projects fall into the same plan.
Okay,
Okay, according to Gary, we have to do it that way.
okay.
So if they're going to go for money and we're going to go for money in the same year, we have to do it together.
Okay, so now this is the same grant that pays it 100%.
Correct.
So basically we be paid for engineering,
Correct.
but only for our section.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, because we do a joint grant, we're not going to pay for
yeah.
engineering for their
No.
project.
We're not,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Gary's going to get us an estimate for the sidewalks up here, and then once the approval happens, then of course the final engineering would happen. Of course, you're probably looking at a couple of years out there for the project to actually get done. But I just want a kind of a green light or a red light to whether it should go ahead with this based on that situation of North Elementary.
Did he have any idea of how much money we're talking about for this project, for engineering?
No.
Okay. Are we committing to anything by the stage that you're at right now?
No, the only thing that, of course, it would be MS Consultants. They're going to want some money for the time that they put in to get the estimates. I'm sure they'll do that, but there's no actual engineering that's going on. What do you think? Proceed?
I think it's a good project. I think the fact that it's 100% paid is a wonderful project.
Right.
It's nice that they could give us some idea of what kind of engineering fees we're going to be looking at to plan in the budget. But we can go to STAR if we have to.
Okay. I think it's
How
a good
do you feel about
project.
that? Mark, finance?
Did Gary say how much he thought the engineering would be on something like that?
How long of a stretch of sidewalk are we looking at?
Well, let's see. You're looking at the stretch from Johnson Place to Island Drive, and then from Island to Delaware is an existing walking path, and then from Delaware to Massachusetts, there would be sidewalk there.
And this is just going down Sheridan, right?
Just going down Sheridan.
So is there
So you're
any
looking
element
at
that we have to acquire?
no, that's all the easement.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay.
I mean, you're looking at hundreds of feet, versus.
Like your $23,000 and $5,000.
That's doable.
I think for now.
Okay. And so then when you talk to Joanne, would you bring that up?
Okay.
Okay? Because Gary did suggest that we go to the school and we should probably get some more data on student, where the concentration of students are. And Gary said that the township and us should do that. We should do that together. Could you bring that up with her?
Okay, should the streets be handling this?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Of course, we're supposed to have a meeting with school on other issues too.
Well, okay, and that's kind of hanging too now with the changes that they just came out with. You know, that has a lot to do with the busing and what we're going to do back there. And so I wanted to run that by you too. I figured we'd come up here tonight, and as far as Russ, because we were going to sit down with the superintendent, but they might not even want to do that now. They might feel like, let's...
Well, how would that affect what we have going on over here?
Well, not so much there, because I think we do need a few more signs over there, to tell you the truth. All those,
Well, what we need
two signs,
is,
that's not enough.
we need the school to communicate to the students and to the parents that this situation exists here now, that there is a sign here and we're going to enforce
Right.
jaywalking or whatever.
Right, and we kind of thought that come spring is the best time to do that, because right now there aren't large groups of children walking.
Yeah.
You know, it's too
What
cold.
busing situations are you talking about that would be effective?
The parking and the busing that we had discussed back in that area, that possibly we would talk to them about putting buses, having loading going on back in that other area.
Yeah.
Well, that all might change now.
Well, there's a good chance it will change,
Yeah.
because the plan is supposedly that the middle school is going to be shut down.
Yeah.
That's not firm plan, but it's out there.
Yeah, so I'm sure they don't even want to discuss anything like that. And then, wasn't there, I know there was mention of, Russ wanted an ordinance for no parking zone back here because of the problems with parents
Long week.
parking, where they're not supposed to, where it's illegal parking, and it's a problem.
Yeah.
So do we still want to
Believe
move forward?
me, the buses lining up there, that is a real problem.
Do you want to move forward on that, or do you want to hold until we get more information about what they're doing over here?
I think we need to open up a dialogue about it, you know.
If I may interject, I was contacted by Eleanor Zediker from the school board to discuss zoning for the property underneath of the buildings. And I can tell you that all options are on the table, and nothing's been decided. So she actually contacted me for that reason.
But we do need to meet with the school about that situation, communicate with the students about the electrical situation.
Well, that we were waiting for an answer from them, correct?
Never anything.
Nothing back. So we'll bring it up.
It should, yeah, that's right. All of these things, I think we
Okay.
need to meet with them.
So you want to move forward with a meeting?
I think we do.
Okay, I will call him.
And then, bring up the thing about potential sidewalk there. And I'm going to call Jim Charbelli about maybe he and I can go to the school about the data that's needed. But I would like to see streets get a little more involved with this too.
Do you still want us to take care of this thing with the school because of the bus traffic?
Yeah, I'm still kind of hanging out.
Okay, I'll talk with Russ and we'll get that meeting set up. And I'll touch base with you before that meeting though, so that we're sure
Okay.
that we're on the same page. I do think that in looking at those two signs across the street, that's not sufficient. We need probably at least two more in front of the library, one in front of the library across the street on our side, because they don't just cross by the, what is the, Ron, I said
Pantry.
the pantry. They don't just cross there. They cross right here from, our property over to the library. Matter of fact, we were coming home one day, coming down towards the village hall, and there was a boy on a bike who went down our sidewalk in front of the building, never even looked straight out into the street and crossed the library. So
By the way, I did get a phone call from one of our other side. And he accused us of trying to ruin his business by putting that sign up there.
okay.
All right. Linda, you have a resolution authorizing the fiscal officer to make any or all necessary requests for available tax advances during the year 2015 and declare an emergency.
Yes, this is just a routine annual resolution that we ask the county to forward us all of our tax advances as soon as they are available.
And Joe, this resolution's off the table right now, right, from Mike?
Nobody contacted me.
Okay. I thought you were going to get it laminated or wait for that too, right?
Yeah, but nobody contacted them, so I didn't get it. I get it. Let's figure next time.
Okay. I'll make sure Russ
Yeah.
calls him.
Okay, then you're going to be here.
Oh, yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah, okay, I'll take care of it.
Okay. All right, we have some guests here tonight. We have Jeff Kerr and Terry Furcana. Terry's a alumnus of Poland High School, and I met her a while ago at an Eastgate meeting, and they represent the Environmental Design Group, and they're here to talk about green infrastructure. So we're probably going to run into 7:30, like I said, we'll stop and do the pledge and go back into it, but you guys have the floor.
Just yell us when you want us to.
Okay.
I'll volunteer kind of do it.
You know what, you will kind of shift your seats if
Yeah.
you need to, but feel free to. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to come tonight. As Tim said, I look for any opportunity to come back home and cheer on the Bulldogs or just come for a visit, so it's good to be back home. I am the Director of Business Development with Environmental Design Group, and our firm is located in downtown Akron by the University of Akron. We've been around for about 30 years, and we've got a staff of a little more than 50 employees. And what we focus on within our firm is planning and design. We've got landscape architects, civil engineers, and surveyors and environmental specialists. And actually, Jeff Kerr heads up our planning and design department. And we've had the opportunity to educate and implement green infrastructure in a lot of communities very similar to Poland. There are a lot of very parallel challenges and opportunities among communities, and Jeff is going to share with you some of the things that we've been able to uncover and to implement. So with that, feel free to ask any questions throughout. We want to keep this very informal. And I guess with that, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so just ask questions. What we're going to do is try to give you an overview of kind of what green infrastructure is. It's kind of a term, you know, our firm is celebrating 30 years this year. So we kind of transcend a lot of the word sustainability and the new phrase of green infrastructure, environmental design. What all those terms are, really it's talking about how to use nature to the benefit of our communities. So when we talk about green infrastructure, we're going to kind of define it. We're going to look at it at three different scales, so to speak. Kind of a regional Northeast Ohio scale, a community level like the village scale, and then a site-specific about what some people are doing literally on the ground in some site-specific areas. So I have about 24 slides. The mayor's going to tell me when I need to pause. We'll go through and I'm going to give you a very, very brief overview. I could probably spend about 4 hours talking. I won't do that tonight. Yeah. So what is green infrastructure? Technically, it's a network. It's a system of natural areas that either protects, provides, or creates infrastructure for solving community problems and climatic changes by working with nature. If we weren't around, if we didn't have a community, we just call it nature. But since we're actually within a community, we actually use those systems or abuse those systems in some cases along the way. So what is green infrastructure? Well, it's our wetlands and our streams, our woodlands and our meadows. Our soils are very important. Vegetation, the organisms that live in that system, they provide a lot of benefits. So you kind of think about that as green infrastructure. It's very similar to how we think about gray infrastructure. That's our roads and our sewers, our water treatment facilities, all those systems we put in to actually kind of deal with a lot of our transportation needs, our clean drinking water, and things like that. So very similar. There's a lot of scientific information, and I'm not going to go into all that extreme white paper detail on all the benefits. You know, a lot of the ones that we deal with, flood mitigation. And I don't know if you guys have had a lot of problems with flood mitigation, like a lot of our communities, but it seems like it's getting more frequent. I wish I had $1 for every time we have a 100-year storm. I don't think I'd have to work anymore. We've seen that a lot more frequently. This past May, we had a storm, at least in our area, that approached by its intensity almost a 1,000-year storm. So we're seeing that, so more frequent and a lot more intense. We also have areas where, just what green space does, we all know that properties next to woodlands are a lot more valuable than in other areas, so you just have some natural values built into that system. So the regional scale. This is a kind of a little simple chart that I like to explain that what what we talk about green infrastructure. So if you think about it as kind of an equilibrium here, with zero kind of being right here in the middle, we have systems that are either productive or consumptive. So productive means they're providing services back to the community at no cost. And we'll get into a little bit some of those details. So what nature does is providing clean air, clean water, better property values. It's providing those services at no cost to the community. On the opposite side, we have systems which require energy or resources or dollars to put in. Our roads, our highways, our sewer systems. So we're either talking about something that's going to provide us a benefit to the community or something that's going to require resources or energy. And we start mapping that, and those are just what we call like the land covers. So whether it's riparian, you know what riparian is? Riparian is like a river system or a stream system, not just the stream, the area around it, wetlands, and we start going down. So mature woodlands, meadows, and then we start getting into here. And there's a lot of information right now on research that the managed turf, our lawns, are actually more consumptive than they actually provide benefit. So we always thought the lawn's better than anything. It's actually a consumptive system. Think about the mowing, the fertilizing, and a lot of times when we put in our subdivisions, and we pack that clay as tight as we can, so we're not getting a lot of that percolation into that. So, and then we get into the developments and obviously impervious surfaces, which a lot of our roofs, our roads, and our highways. This is a logarithmic scale. I promise I don't have too many charts at different logarithmic scales. It's hard to read here, and I don't even know if you can read it on your thing. So on the one side, we have mature woodlands. And as we start changing those covers a little bit, we get to the agriculture and an impervious surface. So you can see the difference in volume, 4,300 cubic yards or cubic feet per year versus 82 versus impervious surface. So we're talking a lot more runoff created from those impervious surfaces, right? And I think that's fairly logical. We all understand that. So this is the map. If you remember back with this consumptive and productive systems, we start mapping that in our community. We start putting those values. So we know that these are our roads. These little black dots are houses. And you can see that those areas in front of the people's are probably their lawn. Then we have these darker blue areas where are actually kind of the woodlands and the wetlands and the streams. We actually can start mapping that and telling our communities where those more valuable places are. What does that allow us to do? One, it allows us to understand what we have. That's probably not done as much as we probably should, is understand where in the community you have those valuable assets. Two, maybe it's a preservation target, working with maybe the metro parks or a land conservancy or some other organization, or maybe it's within the community. The community I live in actually did raise a bond issue to went out to voters and actually put out to buy a large chunk of the Firestone property in Bath Township. So they actually did that. If you look at the right map, what that is actually scoring maps. And so what we did is we took the scores of each parcel. So when we get into these big blue areas down here, well, that means that's the outline of that parcel. We can also then identify what those parcels are. So whether or not the developer comes in, you understand what they have. Or once again, for some of our clients, it's tell us which properties are ones that we want to look at. Okay, we move to the next community. How are we doing on time?
7:30, we just have to be the pledge of allegiance and we'll go back.
So that's fine. It's a good place to stop.
Well, we still have a couple minutes.
Okay, all right, good. Just do it. So now we're at the community level. So this is the level we kind of, the ones that are beyond our political boundaries a lot of times. We're talking about watersheds, those areas of drain, whether it's a major river or a small stream in our area. When we get down to the community levels, a lot of times what we're talking about are things that are a lot more, what you guys deal with on a daily basis. It could be zoning resolutions or updates to your master plans, your comprehensive, some of the things you deal with in that area. So what it is that we're actually, when we protect those things, we do this in protecting the health, safety, and welfare, which is what gives us the law, the ability to do our zoning code. And why does it do that? Well, one, by limiting impacts, we help the community maintain proper ecosystem functions. And we realize that with the loss of the ecosystem functions, it requires investment. So when we take out those resources, we're going to find more runoff, we're going to find more water quality problems, and we have to do something to mitigate those impacts. And what we've found over the years is we haven't really done a very good job of doing that. Most of it we don't understand it. And the last part of that is, well, these functions affect our community's fiscal responsibilities, property protection, housing values, public health and safety. So green infrastructure does a lot of those things which we are allowed legally to do as a basis of zoning and land use. This is for a township in Summit County where, once again, we kind of looked at what those areas of higher value. And it allowed the township to really update their comp plan, their zoning, to really address some of those areas where they have those higher values. They reduced some density, not an easily political thing to do. And then they said, well, in certain areas, maybe we actually allow for higher density to offset that, or we have infrastructure already. The list on the right is pretty exhaustive. We're not going to go through that tonight. We have a lot of information. Those are all the tools that we've used with communities or other communities have used to protect some of those things. So riparian setbacks, wetland setbacks. You can be so many feet off the stream to kind of protect that area. We've got steep slope regulations, woodland tree protection. That's a very contentious issue. We work with a lot of communities where they've actually gone in and regulated, not preventing people taking down trees, but regulating what they have to mitigate when they do that. So I will tell you that's a very contentious one, but in the communities that they've done it in, it's worked out pretty well. And then just in some other areas where like open space and conservation development, low impact design standards, we'll talk a little bit about that in a few slides. And then just really locating where do you want development and where you don't.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call of members.
Mr. Cassett?
Here.
Mr. Donovan?
Here.
Attorney Liver? Mr. Major?
Here.
Mrs. Cernick?
Here?
Mrs. Yap?
Motion to excuse Attorney Limmer.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? For those who don't know, this is our new Deputy Clerk, Mark Moravchak. Those who came late. You want to do your thing?
Suspend?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make a motion to suspend the orders of the day so that we can make our appointments.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the mayor's appointment of Mark Moravchak as deputy clerk.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'd like to... Am I going too fast?
No.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the appointment, the mayor's appointment, sorry, I'm going to really confuse you here. Sorry. Of Cindy Hammock and Sandra Brett as office workers.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I think we should. You guys want to go ahead and back to your thing?
That's fine.
Thank you.
So what we've, now you have a nice built-up village in those areas that maybe are a little bit more developed. We have a lot of times we talk about subdivisions and how we can do that. One thing I always like to point out is an example of, an old farm field where we have maybe the traditional 1 acre lot and sometimes a little bit larger. We think somehow that's protecting our rural character. And a lot of times we actually find that it's actually more impactful. And so the example here are two examples, and it's an extreme example, not one that we would necessarily encourage, but for the idea of a discussion. So in the top example, we have a subdivision that has about 104 lots, about 12,000 linear feet of road. The lower one, which is kind of what they call an open space or a conservation plan, allows for a smaller lot. But what it does is it's really trying to preserve more meaningful open space. So in an area where the top one would clear over 2/3 of the land, the bottom one is only clearing about half the land. And so what that does is actually, in a lower one, we actually, in this example, have 225 lots. So I'm sure developers would love to see that. But the reality is that we're generating a lot less runoff actually from the one that has more lots. The point of this slide is that you have to understand the impact of subdivisions a little bit differently than the size of the lot. And we always try to encourage a lot more of open space subdivisions where we protect meaningful open space. So that's more than just a strip of lawn that's between a road and the back of property. It's really trying to clear out and protect large contiguous areas of open space. Another slide that kind of supports the idea of the importance of nature. This is from a website called treebenefits.com. Anybody can access. You put in your tree, you tell how big it is, and it kind of spits out what the value is. And what's interesting, so we just, for the example, talk about a 24-inch maple tree providing $200 a year in benefits back to the community. Remember that little chart, those productive benefits. So a tree, you think about that in woodland. Now you're not going to have a whole woodland of 24-inch trees, but the whole woodland provides a lot of value back to the community. So you kind of want to think about those things when you're trying to address issues about flooding. A lot of times our natural reaction to flooding is, make sure we send it downstream as quickly as possible. Maybe we have some offline retention basins. But the reality is some of the best things you can do to reduce flooding is make sure you have some of these better land uses, woodlands and wetlands and stuff like that. When you do that, it breaks it down and it goes into a lot more detail if you're actually interested in what that does. So these are the site-specific. These are the ones that we're starting to see a lot more of when we do developments. It's a lot more of the ones that will a lot more grants that are available. You talked about some of the grants you're looking after. EPA has some what they call 319 grants or SWIFT grants. Those are grants that you can utilize through the EPA. It's competitive. There is a match. It varies 20 to 40% match, so it is somewhat significant. But they'll pay for kind of these improvements on like a parking lot or a rain garden or something like that. So when we talk about it, here's kind of the core ones that we use on a day-to-day basis of kind of those green tools on development. Bioinfiltration is kind of like a rain garden. Is everybody familiar with what a rain garden is? It's kind of a low area. You can put some special soil in there. You can plant it with some really pretty flowers. And it kind of holds some water during storms. And then while it's not using the storm retention, it provides some nice aesthetics. Biofiltration cells are a little bit more technical. They have a little bit different thing, but they basically do the same thing. Porous pavements, so you'll see like a porous concrete or porous asphalt, or sometimes they have the pavers now where they have like a little larger space between each of the pavers. It allows that water to go in and infiltrate. And instead of having a compacted subgrade, they're actually open graded aggregate. So a lot more pore space. Big question we get is, well, what happens in Northeast Ohio when trees thaw? The nice thing about porous asphalt and concrete and pavers is there's a lot more pore space for that frozen water to freeze, thaw, and actually not heat and not create potholes. Stormwater harvesting, things like a rain barrel. I don't know if any of you have rain barrels. I had one in my yard. I used to water my garden. Stormwater harvesting, the example right there in that picture, is a much larger commercial one that's used at the Bridgestone Technical Center, where they're actually they water their green roof, which is on the other side there. And that's another one. It's green roofs. Green roofs are a little bit more expensive. You don't see them a lot around Northeast Ohio. They're not as cost effective, but when you can turn them into an amenity, in that case for Bridgestone, they actually use it for a lot of their employees as a place to go out for lunch and just hang out. And it's also a green roof. Stormwater wetlands. A lot of times what we used to do is kind of have big rectangular, perfectly engineered, right corner retention basins to hold our stormwater. What we do now or at least what we try to do now, is create a little bit more of amenity. This is actually at an elementary school where it's holding the same type of volume as the one on the left, but it's actually a stormwater wetland, which we have a lot more different plant materials. It's also a land lab for the school. And so they're able to use it as part of their education as well as managing their on-site stormwater. When we talk about streams, this is kind of the way that we used to get water through our communities, through our sites, is we hard armor those edges, get that water downstream as fast as possible. But as you see, over time, you start losing pieces of that infrastructure, and it costs you a lot of money. So that we do different ways of doing that through kind of normal native stream restoration techniques through stormwater. That's actually at Timken's New World headquarters near Canton, where we drained a 1,000-car parking lot into a nice amenity, whereas before it would look something like that or one slide before. Speaking of parking lots, a lot of times what we'll do is also try to break that up. Instead of large, expansive parking lots at a Walmart, so to speak, maybe there's an opportunity to break that up, and that's where we introduce those bioswales, or those green separations in between the water. In this case, on the left, we have no catch basins in the pavements, so no place for that to fail, for water to sit. It all sheet flows into those green little ribbons, and by the way, they become very nice amenities for the healthcare facility. So we use that a little bit differently than with big, expensive parking lots. Another thing that with green infrastructure, it also reduces the amount of infrastructure you have to put on. One of the projects that we did by just using some of these natural techniques, we reduced 264 linear feet of that pipe. So that saved our client a significant amount of money by not having to put in pipe that we would normally be required to based on our certain stormwater regulations. The one on the right is actually using that as an amenity once again. That's at the Bridgestone Technical Center. That's right on Main Street, literally Main Street in Akron. And it fronts Main Street, and when it rains, these little weirs kind of drain over. You're seeing the back of that. It actually drains right over that weir and kind of provides this nice water amenity. It's a beautiful thing from above. Employees look down on that whole garden. So there's ways to turn that around from a necessity into something that's actually quite attractive. I talked a little bit about managed turf not being necessarily the greatest way to go if you're trying to manage from an ecological standpoint. Just simple meadows, just where we grow just natural grasses. You can tell a lot of difference in how they act. Good graph here. The little circle on the left is what lawn is. So those roots go down maybe 2 inches. Whereas a lot of our natural grasses, native grasses, go down tens of feet down in there. What happens? It breaks up our clay. It provides a conduit for moisture to seep through. They break up, and they actually improve the soil over time. It's a lot more rough. You don't have the runoff. So a great use of that. And once again, those areas that we can turn into those natural meadows, you don't have to manage by mowing every week or fertilizing or watering. And they'll do a lot better in droughts than our lawns do. Last slide. This is the if you're interested and want to go down to Cleveland Metro Parks, just to open their newest reserve in Parma. It's called West Creek, and it's built all on the principles of green infrastructure. And we were fortunate enough to work with Metro Parks in this project, and incorporates a whole host of those tools that we kind of touched upon tonight in one area that they can educate the public and professionals on what those systems are. So with that, I appreciate your time. I'm glad to ask any questions, specifics, but in respect for your time, I didn't want to go into my normal 3-hour spiel.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Jeffrey,
Yeah.
are you part of a private organization? Or
Yeah.
Private. You're in business.
Yeah, we're a consulting firm.
A consulting firm. And you work with the state.
We work with the state, we work with counties, we work with Metro Parks, we work with communities, we work with developers, we work with higher education campuses, we work with a whole host of different organizations and agencies.
Gotcha. And you come over from where tonight?
Well, today I was all over. Today we started in Cleveland, went through Akron, and then here in Youngstown today. So our main office is in Akron, but as we're working with Mill Creek Metro Parks on one of their projects right now, and obviously Terry tries to get down here anytime she gets.
Okay. What would you envision for us?
Well, you mentioned grants. I think that's a great place to start. A lot of those 319 or SWIFT grants, if you're interested, I'll get the mayor some more information on those. Those are a great way to do demonstration projects. A lot of times as you go out to the private community, they want to see what you're talking about. And so sometimes those grants are great opportunities to introduce some of these porch pavements or these bioswales as a demonstration as to what businesses or homeowners could do. The other thing
Okay, you know your way around this area, grant applications, right?
Yep.
And you charge whatever,
Sometimes.
If you get a grant, so much. Okay. Have you ever looked around Poland here?
Terry's going to give me a tour.
Oh,
She's from Poland.
Oh, okay, you clued him in. Okay.
By the way, you have a beautiful
You couldn't see me over
Okay, you know our woods and all that kind of
Spent
stuff.
a lot of
huh?
time in the woods, yeah.
Oh, okay, very good.
That sounded terrible. Sorry.
Clue. What have we got?
Well, and I understood that you went for stormwater utility, and that's a great tool. Unfortunately, you didn't have, but that's a great tool to address a lot of these, provide income to go after these grants and to provide those things. So a lot of communities are going to the stormwater utility as a way to address a lot of the stormwater issues. We'll see more and more of that, especially as we continue to see those intense rain events. People are going to have problems with flooding that they've never had before.
Okay.
So.
And are you aware that we have a setback?
That's great. I'm glad to hear
You know that?
No, I did not know that. That's
Good.
wonderful.
Causes a little grief now and then.
Oh, every time.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. Absolutely.
Just prosecute.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so you're putting in somewhere.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. No, those are tough.
Appreciate
A lot of those decisions are tough. I mean, a lot of people are concerned about the takings issues, private property issues. Those are all issues you have to deal with. And at the core of this, you have to understand, as a community, you have a responsibility here to a larger community. And so some of these tools are ways that people have addressed that in other communities. So it can be very contentious sometimes. So.
Mrs. Gillette, you got any questions?
No, I find it interesting.
Good,
Yes.
good. Well, we have a card. I'd be glad to answer. Like I said, respect to your time tonight. Any other detail, like I said, we've got lots of more information on any of those little specific topics. We'd be glad to talk about that. And the grants, feel free to reach out. We've got a lot of experience.
Do this as a resource.
Absolutely.
Once you start to get your hands dirty in some things, you start to uncover some opportunities. We're happy to talk with you about
And
this
we
as well.
work with Eastgate. I mean, they've got a lot
Yeah.
of resources there that and that's where we're there and stuff like that. So.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank
I'd like
you.
to-
No, we thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good. All right.
Gets back in the Gets back in.
Motion to resume the orders of the day.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, acceptance of the minutes from the previous council meeting.
Motion to waive the reading and approve.
Second?
All in favor? Any opposed?
That would help.
Yeah,
Can you say who's first and second?
I will, yeah, for now.
Yeah.
Bill, you first. Bill Donovan was first, and Mark was second. Correct? No, Linda was second, I'm sorry.
My voice changed. Bill and Linda were second.
Sorry. You'll get this after the meeting. And I asked Jeff before we left, he said anything before I left, someone would Escalade for a company car, so he got me an Escalade. When you guys leave, I'll leave something else. Especially from you. All right. Notifications of meetings and events to the public and news media. Blooper.
Okay, blooper will be before the next council meeting. It's 17th. 6:30.
Finance.
Finance next regular scheduled meeting is the Monday before the first council meeting of March, which is
That's the
March-
third, so it'll be the second.
March the 2nd, 6:30.
Legislation? Nothing with that. Police?
Police met tonight, first Tuesday of the month.
6:30.
6:30.
Streets?
17 to 6:30.
Yeah. Boards, ARB?
We have a meeting this Thursday, 7 p.m. Village Hall.
Planning?
It'll be the 18th at 7 o'clock here. We're going to have a guest, Nathan Bevel is his name, from the Ohio State Historic Preservation Group, and he's going to give us a little guidance from a state perspective on historic preservation.
I think Mr. Linder covered that one. So you find out about it. Board of Zoning Appeals? Nothing. Western Reserve Fire District?
The Western Reserve Fire District is going to meet tomorrow night at 7:30 at Station 92. This is how we normally meet the second Wednesday. For this month, we're meeting tomorrow night, first Wednesday.
Forest Board?
The fourth Tuesday,
7 or 7:30?
7:30.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
That's all the other village halls, otherwise not. And Pine Memorial?
I'm not due until April now, right?
Good night, guys.
Thank you. All right, report from Mayor. I don't have anything to report on that. Probably good. Report from Fiscal Officer, Mr. Sarnik.
Okay, I'm circulating around the list of bills to be paid for your signature. The transition to Farmers Bank is near completed. The federal, state, and county ACHs have all been transferred over. Paychecks will be processing this week's payroll through Farmers. OPERS and police and fire ACHs have all been filed and accepted with Farmers. The next vendor check run. Next vendor check run will be through Farmers. 1099s have been sent to vendors. 1096 is sent to the IRS. And the last thing is the advance resolution for this evening. End of report.
Motion to accept next reports.
Joe Major. And second by Linda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, normally we have a spot for Deputy Clerk if you ever have anything in the section. Report from Zoning Administrator.
No report this time.
Okay. Report from Solicitor.
Just a couple things. One, I reviewed the agreement from MS Consultants, and just a couple changes I might suggest and then cover with council here. One is we have to make it for 1 calendar year, and it wasn't clear on that in the agreement. So I crossed out where it was unclear, and I put for calendar year 2015. The other thing is there was a line for successors that the agreement shall ensure to the benefit of or be binding upon buying against the successors and assigns. And I don't want anyone giving this agreement to another company if they were to be bought out or if they were to be merged or whatever and have us bound to it. So I took that out. I don't think they'll have a problem with it. If they do, we can talk about it, but I just didn't want us bound to another company if MS, not that they're going anywhere, but in case they would, that we would have to then deal with new people that we don't know.
What are you talking about? The contract with MS?
Oh, okay. Yeah, the last line, Mr. Major, says that if either one of us would assign this agreement to someone else, we really couldn't. But if they would, let's say, merge with another architectural or surveying firm, then we'd have to deal with them. And I didn't want to.
I think it's if we were larger.
piece of the pie, they have an issue with that, but that's just, they would be pawning us as an asset.
Right. They would give us as one of their agreements. And then the other thing that I just want to cover with council, and I know we've probably talked about it before, but it's the line about the amounts that we pay. The contract is for no more than $3,500, and we do this every year where we have an amount and then we end up going over it at some point. So I really wanted to take a look at what we are agreeing to get for that $3,500. And just so we're all on the same page as to what it is. And it was interesting that they were here tonight about these grants because what the $3,500 is for is to attend council meetings, keep us up to date on any federal or state grants, and assist us in preparing for applications for federal and state grants, and then assisting us in preparing state to or issue to applications, project status reports, or update the owner's capital improvement report. So anything else that we want different than that does not fall within the agreement. And that's where you get into the other services aspect of it, where we've got to get POs and purchase orders and stuff like that. I don't know if there's not a better way to state this in the contract about what we're getting. I mean, why cap it at an amount that we know is artificial?
Why can't you just say any engineering services until the $3,500 figure is met, and then...
But then nothing happens. I mean, nothing happens when we hit that amount. Then
they draw. Well, yeah, you're right.
It's an artificial number. I'd rather just have a schedule of services, and if there's a different rate prior to $3,500 being hit, which there's not, the rate is the rate. It's Exhibit A. I don't know why we put that in there. I don't.
I think that we probably did it for budgeting reasons. I'm assuming.
The 3,500?
Yeah.
Last year, though, excuse me, we spent zero.
Did we appropriate 3,500?
Yes, we did.
That's probably why it's in there.
And we've never had a problem with them. I don't think we ever will. But it just, as I'm...
What harm is it to leave it as is?
Probably none. But the lawyer in me, sees it and says, well, that's not exactly right. And it's not to the detriment of us, but it's a number that really doesn't mean anything.
I really think it's our number just for appropriations.
Would you want us to
No, I don't
have
have
Gary
to.
come in and change?
Probably next year, I would say we should probably do it differently. But since it's done, and I don't think it's to our detriment, I just need to tell you this because I see it, and now that I know how the contract works, because I've been here for a little bit, it's not how we do it. That number never really comes into play.
It is. It's insignificant, really, because if we have a project going on, it's always over.
I would suggest next year that we just say this is the price per service, which they have on the back here, the schedule, and if you want to cap it on an amount, you can do that, but then you can go over it. So I would just enter into an agreement as to what the services will be if requested by the village at this rate. And then you would pay within 30 days, because there's nothing in here about when we pay it.
No.
So I would say within 30 days of proper receipt and authorization by council, something where there's more of a system that reflects what you do, because this does not reflect how we do it here. That's I guess what I'm trying to get at. But for now, it doesn't hurt us, it doesn't really hurt them. I approved it as to form because everything else in it, it's fine. And I said, other than changing the one part, setting it out for one calendar year, it's okay.
Anthony, by signing this every year, does this commit us to using them for the services?
No, it doesn't say anything about...
Like the village's engineer.
No, it doesn't say anything about exclusivity. So you could hire other people if you wanted. I mean, I know that you needed something to reflect what, I guess, the ordinance requires or law requires about having a contract with a vendor and that kind of thing. I just think contract is not reflective of what the agreement actually plays out to be. So, but it doesn't hurt anybody. I mean, I don't think it will. Just
Well, Mark's the chair now of Street Sidewalks and Drainage, so work it out with him.
okay. So we can either, redo it and enter into it.
We've had the same deal for 20 years.
Yeah, you have. It's the same contract I've always reviewed.
Same.
I'm just getting smarter as I get older. So I approved it. So just want to make council aware of that. We want to pass that down to the mayor. It's okay to sign. And the only other thing, a little bit on what Mr. Donovan said. At last meeting, we talked about me reaching out to Mr. Eiselstein about working with him on finding a suitable spot to put the pavilion. And then I think it was the day after I talked to Dave, just wanted to get on the same page with him. And I asked if he heard from Mr. Eiselstein. He did, and it was not very nice, And then I got Mr. Donovan's information as well about what he called and threatened, or stated. And that's just not.
They all me too.
Yeah, that's just, so I didn't reach out to him because
Why?
he threatened to sue us.
Yeah, but why bother?
Yeah, exactly. Part of me said, well, maybe you should anyway, because I think I can work something out. I know we can find a spot and alleviate that, any problems. But when you treat people like that, like you did, treat council so disrespectfully, and council members, I'll do whatever you want me to do, is what I'm saying. If you want me to try to work something and avoid, any hassles or whatever he may try to cause, I will do that.
Do we have litigation in process from him?
No, we're not in anything right now.
Okay.
So there's no bar for me talking to him. He is represented by counsel, so I'd have to go through his lawyer. But I was just going to reach out, I think it's Chris Zuzolo, and saying, do you want to try to meet and figure out where you can put this? Just, it's up to you.
Well, along those lines, and considering that we're not in litigation at this point, he did ask for proof that he had paid a zoning application fee in July of 2013, and for a formal denial of his original request for the pavilion. So I talked to Paula, actually asked her to look through her, her receipt book to see if something came in at that time, and he had not paid for a formal zoning application, and we do not have a formal denial of that application because it never occurred. So at some point I have to at least write him a letter saying that there's no record of you paying and we have no record of a formal denial.
Did he reapply? Didn't he
And he's gotten a formal denial on that, absolutely. But originally, this is just recollection, he came to our architecture review board meeting and stormed out, so we never received anything.
Yeah, and
it wasn't a formal application.
So that was back in 2013.
July of 2013.
And that's the dilemma is, are we rewarding petulant behavior if I would do this, or are we just being a bigger entity like...
Leave him alone.
I mean, he is planning on moving the pavilion back up.
I don't know.
With the proper channels, we'll
Right.
He's been given that information on how to go about it, and I think we've made the offer before to help us locate it. So to do it again is good.
Okay. I was just thinking about it. If you wanted me to, or if you want me to, I will, but I will not this time. I do think too much. I can't sleep.
Motion to accept the solicitor's report.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Mark said sorry. All right, report from Chief of Police and Street Commissioner.
What department submitted already?
How's our salt? So up?
We're okay. We got 50 tons last week. We mixed it in with what we had. We'll make it. Like I put in my report, I get weekly calls from ODOT, who now has an excess amount of salt, wanting to know if we don't purchase anymore.
They dropped their price?
No. 104.50 a ton.
Tell me give me 75.
Partners down.
With the mix and everything, I bet we've used we've used more than 50 tons, but I started with, we had 100 tons of that brine mix, and we had some salt left from last year. We'll make it. We'll do what it takes. We'll make it.
Russ, do we have anything we can throw on this walkway right here, coming
Yeah.
up to the door? It's really bad.
Yep, and I should have taken care of that today, to be honest with you. The guys were maintaining equipment because this weather really beats them up. They were pressure washing the trucks down, dumping salt out and grease and everything, and we just didn't get to it. I'll get it first thing in the morning.
Thank you.
We had a Eastgate meeting last Monday, and they said last year they used 1 million tons of salt. Up to that Monday of last week, they'd used 250,000 pounds or tons. So like a fourth would be more.
I kind of laugh when I see what these other municipalities use and how little we use. I mean, we can't run any thinner than we do. You know, when Boardman had, did I see they bought 6,500 tons? 6,500 tons. And they had 4,500 tons left. We bought 50. And we bought 100 tons of crushed number 8 with brine sprayed on it at $13 a ton. I mean, you can't run any cheaper than we do.
Not cheaper, frugal.
6,500 tons.
Really determined.
Jeez.
I wanted to add something to Russ's report. We had our meeting running late tonight, but at our next meeting, he's going to bring in a Timothy Tark.
Fake.
Okay, and that's going to be an additional part-time police officer as he is trained. He'll bring him in at our next meeting to meet everyone. And then we're also going to add 2 cadets, a Brandon Hughes and then another woman, Brooke Smith.
Motion to accept the report by the chief and street commissioner.
Second?
You guys make it easy.
We'll just make it easy.
Yes, really.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, report from engineer.
By the way, Gary's mother died. Yeah, Gary Jr.
Reports from outstanding committees of council, finance, wage, audit, and insurance.
Well, we're in the thick of it. Budget planning. Anything that you've overlooked or still want to get to us, get a hold of us soon. And
In writing.
please.
Okay, everything I
We're
discussed
trying.
with you today, do you need any of that? You want that in writing as well?
That would be probably a good thing, since we seem to be having difficulty remembering.
But you're good on the roof and you're good on, what else did we talk about?
Yeah, so the roof is a definite. We need to
The
go
roof?
on that.
Okay.
And in terms of
The controller?
controllers, that's not here.
Yeah, I apologize for that. Okay, the electrical over here for $1,000 and the Christmas.
We figured that the electrical is probably, actually, it would be nice though if we would know what the school is going to do, since it's coming from their property onto our property.
That's why it's hard to put a number on it.
I mean, I realize it wasn't their fault, just like it wasn't our fault, but
Because we have to landscape around this too. And I'll
we
write
need to
something.
do that fill
Yeah.
for the inspection.
Yeah, right, and then we'll have to,
And then I think you should probably put some new lighting back there.
do writing for back here.
And then buy.
What do you think? $500?
Oh, the back door, you mean?
No,
for
Their office.
Oh, in the office, yes, we do. Office.
And
Mini blinds are cheap, they can buy those.
I've been telling her for 2 years to go pick one.
Except the guys who are at Lowe's, we've got commercial.
Okay.
That's what I'll get you when I'll get you mini blinds.
Yeah.
Dave, do you think that you could maybe talk to somebody about this digital map that needs to be replaced?
Absolutely.
So we get some kind of an idea of money for this.
Nick gave me a name and number, so
Right.
I'll call tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to accept the finance report?
Second.
Bill.
Bill is second.
Well, she didn't finish.
She can't second.
She gives the report.
All in favor? Any opposed? Legislation and policy.
Nothing.
Police and fire. Streets, sidewalks, and drainage.
Nothing.
Blooper.
We really don't have any results of a meeting, but Lynn and I were talking about the evergreen trees up here tonight. And the one tree that it's gotten too big, and we're thinking it might be time to bring it down. So that's another...
Is that the Christmas tree?
No, it's the one next to it. It's the one next to it. And we were wondering, with all of your connections, do you think the city of Youngstown would be interested in taking that tree for their Christmas tree next year?
Just saw them there today. I'll talk to them tomorrow or the day after.
And as long as they come and take it down, it's theirs to have.
I'll talk to them.
Hey, wait,
You
whose
could sell
idea is
the
to take
big
a
tree.
tree down there? Hey, Bill,
Blooper.
Here's,
Which one is
there's
the
plenty of
sign?
reasons
We're not-
for it, Bill.
Second one.
There's a reason.
It's encroaching on the other tree and starting to ruin the main Christmas tree. So, and it's
Too big.
just gotten too big.
And then we have concerns that if something happens to the tree that we're using in a storm, we can't really use that gigantic tree next to it. So we really like to get another tree planted and get it started, like maybe 20 foot. I mean, we need to think about a backup plan, because that tree's going to go eventually too, and then we'll have no Christmas tree.
An artificial tree.
The biggest one.
It's the big one,
Yeah.
Yeah, not the one that we like, the one next to it. I'm just going to have it.
I'll talk to them tomorrow.
Just trying to think ahead of the game.
You want the big one taken out?
Yeah.
Well, that big one is never going to be used as a Christmas tree for the village.
We can take that out.
Well, we're saying if they would like to use it downtown, maybe they can come take it for free.
Sorry, I missed that.
I'll check.
Or in
I'll let you
Washington.
know.
Washington, that would be
What?
nice.
Washington,
Rockefeller Center,
I
might
will,
want
because
it.
number
We're not taking it that far.
they can come get it.
Yeah. Okay, end of report.
Motion to accept.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Our reports on boards, Planning Commission,
Nothing?
Board of Zoning Appeals,
nothing.
Architectural Review Board,
Nothing at this time.
Forest Board,
Nothing.
High Memorial.
Well, we just
Well, you-
met last week. I wasn't there.
I'm sorry, I spoke out of turn. Yeah, nothing.
Well, the budget was put together, and the budget for next year is set at $22,500.
Motion to accept the report.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Western Reserve Fire District. Reports from special committees. Communication from residents. Any new business? Any old business? Motions, ordinances, or resolutions?
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to waive the 3 readings, to pass by emergency a resolution authorizing tax advances.
Second.
Yeah, we have emergencies, we do roll call. So, roll call?
Mr. Cassett?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mr. Major?
Yes.
Mrs. Cernick?
Yes?
Mrs. Snack? Yes.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion for the resolution, a resolution to authorize the fiscal officer to make any or all necessary requests for available tax advances during the year of 2015 and to declare an emergency.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Cassett?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mr. Major?
Yes.
Mrs. Cernick?
Yes?
Mrs. Yap?
Yes.
Passes 5-0. Okay, any other motions, ordinances, or resolutions? Second and third readings. Presentation of the bills.
Make a motion that the bills be paid.
Second.
So, Chris is the first, and Mark is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Questions from the news media? All right, remarks by council, Mr. Cassett.
Welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
Another more luck. Stereo Mark. He's supposed to be okay, I'm sure. And be careful leaving today.
Yes. Mr. Donovan?
Yeah. Welcome.
Mr. Major?
Welcome also.
Mr. Singer?
Welcome, Mark. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. Mrs.
Yeah,
Young?
welcome.
I'll say welcome also.
That's easy.
All right, it's 8:14.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:14.
Second.
We'll give that to Linda. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, you can either make a copy.
Meeting is adjourned. I thought you were up.
No, that's, like I said, if you want a copy, I'll go right now.